Hey guys, what's up? It's your boy T for 365 Horror, and this is a horror movie discovery channel. I am just here to put as many horror movies on your watch list as possible, and today we're going to be looking at every single brand new streaming horror release for the week of October 13th, and of course, getting into my trailer reactions. So let's get into it right now. Now we are going to get into the video, but before we do, I've got to remind you guys to please like and subscribe if you like this content. Also, I want to remind you that there will always be chapters and timestamps in the description, so if you don't like any of the movie picks or any of my trailer reactions, you're always free to skip to the next one. And lastly, I want to remind you that I have taken the liberty of front-loading this video with all of the free movies, so once we get to Apple TV and Prime Video, just know that the rest of the stuff is for rent from there. So today's little topic that I want to talk about before we get into the movie list is that I do get a lot of messages from other people who are also Canadian, and they ask me, like, why do you cover movies that come out in the States but don't come out in Canada, seeing as you're Canadian? And to be completely honest, it's because I want to know every single movie that comes out, even if I didn't have access to it. Like, I just want to know about it so that I can look for it or maybe buy it on DVD if I hear it's like good enough or anything like that. But in this case, I have had a VPN in the past, and this isn't a sponsored video by any means for any VPN. I'm not shouting out a company. And I also have a friend who is pretty big into tech and all this other stuff, and he's got a VPN. So when I go to his house, he lets me kind of watch some stuff because I don't have a VPN at this moment, but I have had one before because I wanted to see like what was on American Netflix, etc. like that. So the first thing I would do is, if I am getting frustrated by this, and why I do cover all these movies is because I do have access to a VPN. And the second reason is because if I can't find it or my buddy won't let me watch it on the VPN, I'm going to be completely honest. Like, I don't let that stop me from watching the movies I want to watch, especially if they're just not available in Canada for reasons. Like, sorry, I will find it. This isn't something that I really promote on this channel because I am an artist. I want to be paid for my work. I was and am a musician, and I want to be paid for that work. So I would never kind of promote or, spread around any kind of links to the free stuff. But there is other ways to find this stuff if you can't find it anywhere else. And lastly, if I don't have access to my buddy's VPN and I can't find it, I do just put it on my watch list and wait, because these movies do eventually kind of drop in Canada. They do eventually drop. So at least what I like to do with my watch list is, personally, I open it, I go to what I have added the latest, and I just start scrolling down, and all the movies that I've said that are higher priority, I either have them hearted, or I just kind of remember, certain things like the movie Him I'm going to remember, and I just go down the list. And as I come to movies that I was like, ooh, I really wanted to watch that, I'll kind of do a search then. And you'd be surprised. After a while, a lot of these movies, like I said, do become available. So don't give up if a movie that you're seeing isn't immediately available. But lastly, I want you guys to know that I do have my fellow Canadians back, so what I will try to do as best I can is, when I am introing the movie, when I first say like it's a horror thriller, whatever, I will try to add a little bit of a Canadian flag down in the corner, hopefully being shown right now. And if in the intro of the movie you see that Canadian flag, that basically denotes that I was able to just find the movie like raw, like just on Prime as is, no VPN, no sources. And so at least you'll have a little bit of a heads up to the movies that you can watch, and you won't get like all worked up over movies that you don't yet have access to. All right, but spooky season continues, so let's get into some movies I watched. And the first movie I watched this week was The Toxic Avenger, and I really enjoyed this movie, actually. I thought it had a really good humor, a ton of gore. If you want to watch something with like gore, not disturbing gore, like it wasn't anything like, personally, I find a movie like Atroz is like disturbing, where I'm like, oh my God, what am I watching? Cannibal Holocaust, where they're killing real animals, like there is disturbing gore. The gore in this isn't disturbing, but it is plentiful. There are a couple of kind of CGI moments that I wish weren't so CGI, but There is a lot of practical stuff too, making the movie really good. And even though this is a comedy horror, because you know those aren't my favorite, I did find that a lot of the comedy was like very witty and culturally relevant. You know what I mean? It kind of, a lot of humor that would kind of go in the social stuff for today, which kind of made me laugh. And it had a lot of kind of background. I can't remember exactly what movie this is from, but it's a very famous, it might have been Shallow Hal or something, but there's one part where it's just like, that's a huge bitch. And some guy says that like off in the background. And this movie has a ton of that kind of Simpsons-esque background chatter, but all of it was pretty good. Like none of it was whack. So I actually kind of really enjoyed this movie. And personally, I know this is going to be a hot take, but especially because I wasn't really a fan of comedy horrors, especially back then, I did find this movie done right and maybe even a touch better than the original. Don't crucify me. I just enjoyed it more. That could be because of the datedness of it, but that is one movie. If you like comedy horror, it gets a little zany, but not too zany. That's definitely one to watch. And the next movie I watched this week was The Conjuring Last Rites. And personally, I thought this movie was pretty good. I know I have some viewers who said that it wasn't all that, or it was kind of dumb, or they're glad the series is over. But personally, I found it okay. I know some of the creature stuff was a little bit creaturey, but personally I found that it just had some pretty good jump scares. I found the conclusion of the story was okay, and personally I enjoyed it. We watched it in the dark. There was a couple little creepy moments. Now, there is one thing that I want to ask, like in this, please put it in the comments or put your idea in the comments if you have an idea about this, but lately I've been noticing that this new generation, it's kind of more of like a grief horror, like, you know, where it's just bleak, grief, kind of dark, but rooted more in realism. And I'm starting to wonder, are movies like Evil Dead or Conjuring, where it's kind of got that more slapsticky, supernatural, kind of scary entity feature, is that kind of bad nowadays? Like, I don't know, is that dated? Is that just me from my like 90s 2000s days really liking kind of the whole, you know, supernatural weird creature thing? Like, is that just unrealistic and lame nowadays? I don't know. I still like it regardless, and I'm still gonna watch the movies that I like, but I like to know the landscape. Like, are people, you know, younger people who are into horror today, do they just find that kind of lame, or what do you guys think? Do you guys think that that's kind of played out and now you want to see these kind of bleak grief rooted in reality stories, kind of more like Bring Her Back, where it's got that innate horror with the characters and not so much like The Conjuring, where you have an entity that's like showing weird faces? But yeah, I was just wondering what you guys thought of that. So whatever you think is the answer, am I totally way off base or what? Weigh in the comments. And the last movie I checked out this week was Vicious, and I thought that Vicious was okay. It was pretty decent. It definitely has some painful injuries. The mystery of the box wasn't as deep as I would have liked it to be. I also found that they didn't tell us enough really about the box, but the old lady was creepy. A lot of it was pretty good. The ending was just okay. It wasn't a movie that, like, you know, knocked my socks off, but it was enjoyable enough. Like I said, with some good painful injuries. Dakota Fanning was really good in it. It was definitely a passable movie, but not one that I would pay like premium to rent. And now on to some streaming news. If you haven't seen it yet, the movie I Know What You Did Last Summer is coming on Netflix. And again, I'm sure that you've seen my kind of pseudo review for this, but the movie was okay. It was passable. The mystery of it was okay. It kind of harkens back to the first one. It was really well done, slick. I liked kind of the cinematography and editing on the movie, but unfortunately, it was just horribly cliche, so you're not getting anything really groundbreaking here, but it might be the perfect movie to kind of watch free. I mean, you are paying a streaming service, but, you know, to watch at a lower cost on Netflix, maybe it's worth a watch in those regards. So the first movie we're going to take a look at this week is a horror sci-fi thriller named Jabberjaw, and this movie is available free on YouTube.
Someone out there?
Someone out there? Is there someone out there?
When a battered woman goes camping with a friend, a mysterious stalker in the woods makes her question if it's her abuser or something more sinister. It is directed by Luke Genton. Okay, after watching the trailer for Jabberjaw, this one's definitely giving me some subpar kind of horror sci-fi thriller vibes. So for starters, this movie is filmed in kind of a found footage style, and you know me, I do dig my found footages, and I do like the fact that this film does actually try to pack in some creeps and scares, so I will give it that. And the whole idea of this entity kind of just like mimicking the characters and how it sounds as it's echoing, it's just wholly unsettling, so I think we could get some kind of good, kind of creepy, spine-tingling moments out of that. Now here's where the film kind of loses me, because I feel like the B-movie kind of aesthetic on this one, it's just a little bit hard to ignore. I found that the acting was pretty rough, and some of that CGI, it just looked really iffy. So overall, I wouldn't exactly say skip it, because it is a free movie and you can never really go wrong with that. But just the way that the movie's presenting, I think this one's going to get a lower priority on my watch list.
It's time you captured some good memories with that thing.
Do your Bigfoot call.
There's Minnie. Where are you taking me?
It's a girls' weekend camping trip.
There's someone out there.
Hello?
Next movie we're going to take a look at is a comedy horror named The WeedHacker Massacre, and this movie is available on Tubi.
Run my friggin' movie!
How many remakes of bad horror movies can you remake? The cast of WeedHacker Massacre film where the murders occurred 10 years ago. Bad acting, bounced payroll checks, and the killer's return threaten what is to become their worst movie ever. It is directed by Jody Stelzig. Okay, so after watching the trailer for the WeedHacker Massacre, this one's falling in a little bit of a kind of subpar to meh slasher. Now, I get that this film is basically about making a bad movie, so there is a chance that we could get some kind of clever foresight there. And to be fair, the gore in it looks solid, and the humor, it actually got like a light smirk to a light chuckle out of me. But a lot of the acting in it just feels way too wooden, and a lot of it just leans to be kind of just really campy. And the tricky part of like a bad movie about a bad movie is that you really have to try to like look bad without actually being bad. And sometimes even though the movie isn't the greatest, that does end up becoming like this weird shield against criticism. Now the WeedHacker Massacre might dish out a few fun kills, but other than that, I think the film is just a little bit meh. But it's free on Tubi, so just like the first one, you kind of get what you pay for. But because of that, honestly, this one has to get a lower priority on my watch list.
It's the name of the movie, The WeedHacker Massacre.
Yeah, the WeedHacker Massacre.
We are trying to finish this film, but our actors and crew keep disappearing. Some say it's because we're shooting on the same site as the gruesome murders that happened 10 years ago.
Next movie we're going to take a look at is a drama horror thriller named Other. And this movie is available on Shudder and AMC+.
I'm a monster.
Alice returns to her childhood home after her mother's death, only to find out the house is rigged with surveillance tracking her every move, as a sinister presence lurks, driving her towards a terrifying revelation. It is directed by David Moreau. Okay, so after watching the trailer for Other, this one looks like a pretty middle-of-the-road thriller. But I don't mind that the film is trying some weirder things, and they are trying to kind of slip in some scares, so that's a plus. But honestly, other than that, nothing in this trailer really grabs me. There's no like real hook or some element that makes me say, oh my god, I need to see where this film goes. But one thing that did catch my attention about this one was the constant repeating of that mantra, I'm beautiful. That mixed with this almost drama horror tone hints that we may see a character not only struggling with like the dark secrets of her deceased mother, but almost like an inner battle with herself. Overall, I think that Other could end up being something intriguing, so I think this one's going to get a regular spot on my watch list.
My mom died, Johnny.
When was the last time you spoke to her?
We didn't really talk.
What do you see, Alice? Say it again. I'm beautiful.
I'm beautiful.
Next movie we're going to take a look at is a horror mystery named The Strangers Chapter 2. And this movie is available on Google Play, Apple TV, and Prime Video. Left stranded in a small town with no way out, Maya must once again face a night of terror courtesy of 3 deadly killers, whose rampage she must put to an end. It is directed by Rennie Harlan. Okay, so after watching the trailer for The Strangers Chapter 2, this one's landing in a little bit of a meh to decent mystery slasher zone. Now, first off, I want to give the movie some credit because it does look like we're going to get some pretty solid escape tension, and I like the choice that they actually tried to kind of reveal the killers' faces and put like a face behind some of the killers. I did like that choice, and I found that it was kind of a nice twist on the formula. But here's the problem, I just don't really care about any of the mystery, and after the mediocre first entry into the series, it just doesn't spark any real curiosity. And honestly, I feel like it's going to really boil down to the same old reasons, because they're crazy, because they're a cult, or just because they can. But I will say it now, I will be pleasantly surprised if they do throw something in there to actually throw me for a loop. I will be shocked. But honestly, again, I find we all have different triggers for horror and scares, and home invasion stories, they just don't really scare me anymore. So overall, I think that The Strangers Chapter 2 looks pretty middle of the road, but I do want to keep up with this franchise, so I think this one will get a regular spot on my watch list.
Come on, Sheriff. We all want to hear about who killed that young couple.
Why are you doing this to us? Because you're here.
The girl didn't die.
Next movie we're going to take a look at is a crime horror mystery named The Mannequin. And this movie is available on Apple TV and Prime Video.
Oh, in the name of Jesus Christ, I command you, leave!
A stylist assistant investigates her sister's death in a historic LA building, only to face a vengeful ghost of a serial killer who dismembered victims decades ago. She must escape before she's next. It is directed by John Berardo. Okay, so after watching the trailer for The Mannequin, this one's giving me meh to decent serial killer slasher vibes. Now, I'll be honest, I kind of dig the kitchen sink approach here because you get a little bit of everything. You get this serial killer slasher who has a supernatural twist because he's back from the dead. You get a circle of friends element. You get a cursed mannequin. You get an occult ritual. It is a lot, but it kind of feels fun in a chaotic way. I also caught a fair bit of gore because there's some pretty nasty, gruesome injuries that you see these girls inflicting on themselves when they're possessed. And when it comes to that kind of creepy, jerky movement style, you know that I love that. And you do get a good bit of it in this film, even though some of it just came off a little bit hokey. Still, I think that The Mannequin looks like a solid slasher with some promising kind of supernatural elements. So this one's getting a regular spot on my watch list.
This is huge.
I know.
What's back here? Oh shit, I thought that was a real person. So where'd you get this?
The next movie we're going to take a look at is a straight horror named The Jester 2. And this movie is available on Apple TV and Prime Video. When teen magician Max crosses paths with the sinister Jester on Halloween night, she must outsmart a supernatural killer whose magic is all too real and whose tricks always end up in blood. It is directed by Colin Krawchuk. Okay, so after watching the trailer for The Jester 2, this one's shaping up to be kind of a meh to decent slasher. Now, Halloween night as the backdrop during spooky season is always a win. And I find that these kind of movies can really hit the spot when you're just trying to soak up a bunch of that like Halloween spirit. And the holiday setting, just with plenty of kids and plenty of people kind of out and about, always means the potential for one thing: lots of victims. Now, we don't really see a ton of gore in the trailer, but there is one moment where the Jester kind of like pulls off his mask and what's underneath is actually pretty grotesque. And that tells me that we're really in store for just like a classic level of kind of slasher gore. I don't really think the movie is going to be a splatterfest. Now, The Jester 2 might not be really blowing me away, but it delivers those like really good warm Halloween vibes. So if as it gets closer to Halloween night, I think this one might get a regular spot on my watch list.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and ghouls, I'm your host, DJ Jack, and I'll be your guide through the spine-tingling lineup for you tonight.
Next movie we're going to take a look at is a horror sci-fi thriller named The Astronaut. and this movie is available on Prime Video. When an astronaut crash lands back on Earth, a general places her in quarantine for rehabilitation and testing. As disturbing events unfolds, she fears that something extraterrestrial has followed her home. It is directed by Jess Varley. Okay, so after watching the trailer for The Astronaut, this one looks like a decent kind of sci-fi thriller horror. Now, one thing I've always liked is that kind of return from space premise. You know, where like people come back from space and they're kind of changed personality-wise, or they've kind of brought something back with them. It just really gives us a kind of good mystery as to where they've been and what they've seen. It's just a setup that I find usually builds a pretty solid mystery, and I also found that the trailer did a good job of just nailing that tone. And some of the tension that we see actually lands in the trailer, because the glimpses we get of the alien, it actually looks pretty menacing. Like, I'm not going to say overly menacing, but properly menacing. And throw in a solid cast like Kate Mara, Lawrence Fishburne, and Gabrielle Luna, who, as a side note, I got to meet when we had him as a guest at a comic book store I owned. And I think we're going to get some pretty good solid performances and a solid production quality. My only hope is that they at least attempt to kind of push this genre forward a bit, because these back from space bring something back movies, they can kind of tend to feel a little bit samey, especially if you don't really try something different. Still, when we look at it thriller-wise, The Astronaut looks like a decent watch, so I think this one's going to get a regular spot on my watch list.
Something punctured your capsule and shattered your helmet.
What do you think it was?
Could have been meteor debris. You're lucky you survived.
Next movie we're going to take a look at is a horror sports movie named Him. And this movie is available on Google Play, Apple TV, and Prime Video. A young athlete descends into a world of terror when he's invited to train with a legendary champion whose charisma curdles into something darker. It is directed by Justin Tipping. Okay, so after watching the trailer for Him, I personally think that this one's shaping up to be a decent to good sports horror. Now, right off the bat, I really love the brutality that we see here, because even though it's not like chock full of creeps and scares, I find that we just get like hard hits, bone-rattling collisions, and a good dose of gore. I also like the way the film almost leans into that old school football culture, because with today's kind of CTE awareness, I find that the game, it's just way more regulated. Because back then it was almost like a pure, just like you better walk it off toughness. And while that isn't good, I don't mind seeing it on film, because it seems to capture that like raw, violent energy perfectly. I also like Marlon Wayans, so I think casting him is good. Tyreek Withers, I mean, he's a pretty boy, and I didn't mind him in I Know What You Did Last Summer. He was a character that I liked, so I'm glad that they have some good, solid characters that I think will kind of give us good performances in the film. And now for one of the drawbacks that I do see, this is a Jordan Peele project, so I know there's going to be a lot of polarity. A lot of his movies, even though they tend to start out with kind of a more straightforward narrative, always tend to end up into kind of like the WTF obscure territory. And unfortunately, I've already heard rumblings from people who don't like the film that it does end up going that way. But hopefully, for my sake, I hope that the movie doesn't really broach into anything too weird and does a good job of at least trying to hold like a regular, just cohesive narrative. Now, even though I haven't heard the best things about this movie, I am a pretty hardcore football fan. So I really am rooting for this one to kind of exceed my expectations, and I think Him is still going to get a watch immediately on my watch list.
Wait, what are we doing? That man's smile about to be on the floor. This is how you do your teammate?
All right, guys, last movie for the week, and I want to thank the viewer who kind of sent me the heads up on this movie named Go Packers 4520. Thank you so much. Sometimes when I cover these movies, some of them are limited because they're released at film festivals and stuff, and they don't really update us on when they actually release. So I think this one did release like a month ago, and I must have missed it or something. I am not perfect, but this one looks pretty good. Also, as a side note, is another like story that I may tell another day, but I actually dated a girl from Green Bay, Wisconsin, and she bled green and gold for sure. And it actually made me a little bit of a fan of the team. Like, I always liked Aaron Rodgers, so you can already tell the kind of era that I'm talking about, not nowadays. But I did like that team, and so I did kind of follow them for the couple of years that we dated. But like I said, that's definitely a story for another day, so let's get into the last film, which is an action comedy horror named Ick. And this movie is available on Apple TV and Prime Video.
Run!
Science teacher Hank's life changes when he reconnects with his first love and suspects a new student, his daughter, all while facing an alien threat in their town. It is directed by Joseph Kahn. Okay, so after watching the trailer for Ick, I think that this one's shaping up to be a decent to good kind of comedy alien monster horror. And I love that this film really leans into the gore because I think that this Ick creature just looks slimy, disgusting, and the perfect amount of gross. On top of that, I think that the humor, especially in the trailer, actually lands. We're getting some sharp, relevant jokes with a good amount of kind of social bite to them. So that kind of could add another layer of fun. And with Brandon Routh and Mina Suvari in the mix, I'm looking forward to some good, solid performances. Along with the fact that I thought that the visuals and editing of this movie just had a really stylish look. Overall, I think that Ick looks like a funny, disgusting, kind of gross, bloody ride. So I think that Pedigree is going to earn it a regular spot on my watch list.
It holds 10 songs. I put all our favorites on it.
Promise me you'll take me with you to the NFL, to a giant mansion with a giant pool that has a fat hot tub that's connected to the giant pool so I can swim from lot to cold whenever I want.
Yes. I love you, Stacy. Just takes a second.
Well, guys, that's going to do it for another episode of brand new releases for you guys to watch and stream. I hope you like this content, and if you did find a couple of gems for your watch list, please leave me a like and subscribe. Now, if I had to make a couple of picks this week, even though I've heard all the rumblings about this being a horrible movie, I think the first pick I'm going to have to make is him. Again, I'm just an avid football fan. I think that some of just the like, you're not tough enough, like they just go at each other. I like that how that looks. Being a former football player, I actually used to play football, and we always would do like some who's the toughest stuff because again, this was back like mid-late 90s kind of idea. And I think it looks bloody. I think a lot of the hits and some of the stuff that he puts them through looks good. I like this culture of just like this kind of brutal, hard-hitting kind of football training that really changes, you know, the main character or makes him maybe rethink what he's doing, or I don't know where this film really goes. I think it's unfortunate that a lot of people kind of said already that it's like pretentious crap. So hopefully it just doesn't take that Jordan Peele route and we get something good and entertaining to watch. And the last movie I'm going to pick this week, even though Go Packers definitely brings up some weird memories, is the movie The Ick. I just think it looks like funny with its social kind of commentary that does poke fun. Hopefully no one gets offended, but it does look scathing and biting kind of in the humor department, which actually made me laugh. But The Ick itself just looks disgusting and slimy and gross, and I think the movie is going to have a lot of gore. You just see parts where this Ick kind of just destroys creatures and rips them like apart within like a showering of a ton of blood. So that part really intrigues me. And I like Mina Suvari. I feel like I haven't seen her in a while. I remember a day when Mina Suvari was all the rage back in the American Beauty days. She was in a ton of stuff, but we haven't seen her in anything in a while. And I like Brandon Routh. A movie that I really liked was Scott Pilgrim vs. the World. He was good in that, in my opinion. And he's just been in a ton of superhero stuff, obviously. So I expect good performances that way. I know there's other movies that I could have picked besides it, but I actually think that movie looks kind of like a fun, kind of gross watch. So I think that's going to be my second pick of the week. Well, guys, I'm out of here for real this time as I've got a ton of movies to watch. If you've made it this far into the video, thank you. I appreciate you. I appreciate your support. I hope you guys have been taking care of yourselves, and I will see you guys in the next one. Peace.
Come on.
You could have just opened it. I mean, that was super dramatic and all, but
Now we have to crawl over broken glass.